this is the Dr. Deborah Show, and this is the show where we talk about bringing peace and calm into your life. We're live at KCSB FM Santa Barbara 91.9, and KCSB is a platform for cultural expression and thoughtful discussion. And I'm a Santa Barbara-based clinical psychologist, and I specialize in pediatric neuropsychology. And during my clinical training and my current work, I've treated thousands of people, and I want to share my experiences with you. I'm also a UCSB alumni, and I live locally in Santa Barbara. And this show's all about our community and how to create compassionate conversations about our well-being and health. Again, I want to welcome our listeners to the Dr. Deborah Show. It's wonderful to have you with us. And as a reminder, this show is psychoeducational and is in the area of neuropsychology and well-being. It's not meant to replace professional mental health advice or therapy. So if you do believe you suffer from a particular disorder, please do reach out for professional help. And today on the show, we're talking about mental health and well-being with a focus on music with our very special guest, Carly Jo Jackson.
Hey. What's up?
She's all here, ready. Carly has a voice filled with grit and soul, and she brings the heat of the Florida sunshine to all she does. Carly has a vocal tone that is as infectious as her charismatic stage presence. She caught the attention of some big names in the music and entertainment business, opening shows for Michael McDonald, who also provided vocals on her recent EP, Kenny Loggins and Dennis Quaid, and serving as a musical inspiration to Jeff Bridges, who recently featured her on his Sleep Club website. Other notable performances include her appearance in 2014 on America's Got Talent, where she appeared in 2 televised episodes and advanced to Judgment Week. Performing as an emerging artist at 2018 Summerfest, singing backup vocals to Kenny Loggins at 2019's Hawaii Songwriters Festival, fun things, performing at the renowned 30A Songwriters Festival along with Jason Isbell, Brandi Carlile, Sean Mullins, Livingston Taylor, and more. Also, she opened a San Francisco 49ers game. Wow.
That was fun.
Sounds really fun. And winning the 2015 Belk Southern Musician Showcase. In late 2019, she released her EP, Au Natural, produced by Chris Polonis and Lost Chord Records and distributed by Jimmy Buffett's Cherry Bomb Records. Welcome to the show, Carly.
Thank you. That was a beautiful introduction.
Well, because you're a beautiful woman.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to have Carly on because she's like this budding musician that I've gotten to know as a friend, and also just it's great to watch you blossom and grow.
Thank you. Gosh, it means a lot coming from you, so I appreciate that.
Thank you. Well, it's fun because we get to be friends, and hopefully we can just share some of your wisdom, too, about music, and I know you inspire a lot of people.
Oh, thank you.
So it's fun, too, to hear your ideas, too.
Thank you.
We can collaborate. And so we'll talk a little bit about mental health stigma. We'll talk about mental health and music as they intersect, and then maybe some ideas about prevention and awareness through music. And we're talking about mental health stigma today because mental health is the largest public health priority. It's also the largest financial burden globally. That's according to the World Health Organization and the World Economic Forum. So it's a really important cause that I come on the air and like to talk about. And also, the Centers for Disease Control has put out a big article called Attitudes Toward Mental Illness, but they found that stigma and embarrassment are 2 of the top reasons why people don't seek help.
I can see that, yeah.
I'm always trying to reduce that and even maybe come up with a new word for stigma, if you have a new word.
That would be good.
Yeah, it'd be cool, because stigma is I think it's confusing. But anyhow, the other thing I like to just let people know is that issues surrounding mental health, I think, affect all of us. And the new kind of way of thinking about mental health is more like how if we get a cold or we get a broken knee, we're going to go see somebody and talk to them and figure out what we need to do.
Yeah.
So, and then how maybe I think of mental health, to put it simply, is like a physiological balance, meaning our nervous system, our heart is beating at a nice rate, our thoughts kind of feel calm, and I think that gives us a sense of inner peace.
Totally.
I was wondering, Carly, how would you describe mental health?
I think, like you said, I think it's a daring thing, but also a very accurate thing to do, to place it almost in a category of like common cold and things like that, because it makes people realize that it can affect every and any one of us at any time. If you go through a traumatic situation, or if you have already been through one, and if you'll think halfway through your life that everything is fine, but you have these issues going on that nobody talks about, and so it ends up hurting you a little more than it should. So I think that it's a commonality in all of our lives. I think we can all kind of relate to it, whether we realize it or not. In some way, it probably affects. And there's definitely things that we can do in our community to make it a little more acceptable and a little less, like you said, stigmatic, and we need a better word for that.
We need a word that doesn't sound so distant almost, you know what I mean? Because I think that it maybe that idea won't be as distant, but I love what you're saying.
Yeah, because you associate the word stigma with some negative things.
Exactly.
And it's not negative. It's important to talk about your mental health, because then you'll end up in a dark place without that help.
Totally. Well, it kind of accumulates. I think we, especially in America, we live like we think, okay, I can compartmentalize that and I can put it here and there. But, you know, it like accumulates.
You'll lose your job or something if you start talking about like your weaknesses and things like that.
Well,
like,
that is a big fear people have. I mean, I think more companies are having more mental health resources, which is awesome. But I think, and even like the NBA or the music industry, I always think there's still like a chasm, a little gap there, you know, because it's like, well, if I say something, will that be used against me? Or I know we need to come up with like some law or something so people feel safe, I think.
Yeah,
or,
almost
I don't know.
like kind of like we have like laws against certain things like harassment and things like that. There should be laws like if you start feeling a certain type of way that you must go on a break, or that you must go see some counseling or some help or something, just for the benefit of things.
And also if we had more nature, I think, in our workplaces.
Oh my gosh.
Wouldn't that be great?
Totally.
Because that helps us.
Yesterday I was having a really rough day. Like I just woke up already in a fog. And I was talking to my mom, who's very sweet and has lots of good ideas. And she said, you should go for a walk in nature. And I'm like, why would I want to go for a walk? I'm already tired. But I got this profound energy out of nowhere whenever I started walking through. I went to Los Carneros Park, and it's a beautiful spot. If you haven't gone to it, go take your dog, go take a notebook, draw some pictures or something.
It is super pretty there.
I felt revived, like just by being in nature, and I can understand why people say that. It's like something with the energy that's going on there.
If you don't know where Lake Los Caneros, it is a little hidden gem. It's like off Los Caneros Road, and there's this huge lake, and there's ducks.
And it's a small but safe park. Like you don't feel like you're lost in the woods there, because I wasn't sure if I was going on a trail that I would.
We kind of go around the lake, right?
Yeah, it's just a big circle, so you can't get lost.
But it does not seem like it's a circle in a way, because the way they made the path, it's very pretty and tranquil.
Gorgeous. Yeah, lots of benches for you to sit and think on. So as far as helpful situations for maybe a mental cramp, that would be a good place to go. Like
totally.
In nature and having that around.
Well, I mean, and even I've just gotten into mindfulness meditation over the last decade or more, because I think just pausing and kind of, sitting and noticing your breath and taking in some nature is very restorative. And we could do that. I wish we could teach that like to our kids and adults.
In young times, like
to do our whole life.
Elementary school or something, there should be meditation classes.
And parenting too. Wouldn't it be great? I mean, like, that's wonderful that your mom taught you that.
Yeah,
and that you listened.
She's very into nature and water and stuff like that. I think that's how she stays so sane. Maybe that's the secret these days.
That is the secret. That's my medicine, is nature, really. I mean, it's my refuge, because if I feel stressed out, I usually go garden, or I'll go just and look at the mountains or notice the wind on my cheeks.
Something about fresh air and just being out there.
It's really a blessing.
Totally. Glad you agree.
We are in agreement. So basically, I think we're both saying mental health, kind of part of it is, a big part of it is maybe nature, right? And also how to reflect, pause, and find a refuge, like a place to kind of fill yourself up and kind of recalibrate yourself.
I think it just honestly, too, just physically slows you down. When you're starting to get a little caught up in things, it almost feels like your brain is running a mile a minute, like that you can't stop, and things keep packing on over and over again. And that's when you break, is when you lose yourself, because it just cracks.
Totally.
And you'll totally slow down if you take those slow walks outside, deep breaths.
So sometimes it's an illusion, like we have to hurry here and hurry there. But the pace of life is pretty fast, especially like in your profession or mine, or you know what I mean? We're all running around.
Blink and a year goes by sometimes.
Totally.
So.
Well, you're still very young. So.
But it's a commonality for all of us. I think everybody feels that way.
I think there's a psychology to music. I mean, even when I was doing my research for the show, and I've had other musicians, but each time I look, there's always something new coming out about kind of the psychology of music.
I'm always looking up on YouTube videos that are of healing sounds, I guess. Like people say certain frequencies and hertz sounds that they're out there that can calm you down or speed you up or make you sad.
Probably they're the same hertz as like the wind or something. You know what I mean? The natural elements probably provide a certain... I wonder if they could measure the level of like the wind hurts or something. Wouldn't that be?
People can create like sonic weapons out of sound. Like you can discombobulate somebody's organs.
Totally.
So I imagine you can do the opposite.
It's so
as well.
true. I saw 60 Minutes on. I like that show, 60 Minutes.
Yeah, me too.
They had a great one. We like the same shows. But like 6 months ago, you could look it up. It's fascinating. They were talking about, I think it was the Russians used this kind of sound warfare. And they would put these like, I think they were spies
like
or something.
Point a thing.
Well, they couldn't see anything, but what they could feel was this like weird vibration, and it like incapacitated them.
It hurts your head, it makes your stomach hurt.
So like music can be a weapon. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. So, and if you think, if it can do that, how well could it heal?
Exactly. I love that way of thinking. That's a really healthy way. And that kind of brings me the idea too, is when I notice people talk a lot about like they don't like this and that's not working. I don't want that. I think that's healthy, kind of what you did, and is kind of reframe and think, okay, well, it could be this way, but then what would be the opposite of that? Like I could totally.
World is about balance. If there's something bad, then there's something good to balance it out somewhere.
Totally.
You just have to find
it's
it.
kind of, well, that's really the key, I think, to our health is balance.
I heard this. It was on this little cartoon show. I don't know if anyone's seen it, but it's called Kubo, and he says this amazing quote. I was watching it, and he says, for every ugly thing in the world, there's always something far more beautiful. So you just have to get there and get to and look at the other end of the spectrum.
It's kind of, I look at it like nature again, because it's like, if you think of like a leaf even, or a flower, I mean, it's, it starts out in its infancy, it blooms, it blossoms, it's super green, and healthy and beautiful. But then, eventually it's going to dry up and die. And
then it falls to the ground and becomes food for other things.
Totally.
So it's like a full-on cycle.
It is. I know everything has a purpose. I think it's kind of about surrendering in some ways. That's probably why music is so healing, right?
Yeah, I think so too. There's times whenever I bring out my guitar in the morning play is my favorite, because it's at this super magical time where you're a little bit tired, but you're awake and your ideas are still kind of creeping out of dream mode. So you have this awesome infinite door that's never usually opened, and when you play certain notes, it's almost like you can feel them.
Do you want to play a note now, or do you want to play it in a little bit? Yeah.
We can play it
in a little bit. Carly's already, she's so cute. She has her guitar. And I've been thinking, I think it's really wonderful to have kind of you and your words and your music, you know what I mean? Because it's kind of a blend of your experience.
It's awesome how you blend music and psychology together like that, because I think that they really do go hand in hand.
Oh, yeah. I think everything has an intersection, too.
With psychology, because it's our human life. Like,
exactly.
Everything intersects with that.
I know. I think that's part of reducing the stigma, is like, let's talk about lots of topics. And we don't have to just limit it to just mental health.
It happens to everybody, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I think, and I was looking up, if you're just jumping into the show now, I'm here with Carly Jo Jackson, who's this amazing budding musician, and we're here exploring the relationship between mental health and music. And mental health is like a major theme in a lot of art today, particularly music. And as our society, I think, continues to kind of break down the stigma around talking about struggles, many public figures are sharing their experiences with issues like depression or anxiety or grief, amongst others. And I think for musicians, this conversation takes place not only in interviews, but also really in, songs, because I think songs help foster an awareness and acceptance of mental health. And I think lyrics, really show, I know you've even shared with me at times, like, your songs have, it's like a story, really.
Yeah, totally.
So, and I just like to just briefly talk about mental health stigma, just in case you don't know what mental health stigma is. And if you have an idea for another word besides stigma, I'd love you to let me know. Send it in, because I feel like I remember I had another guest, and it was Chris. He said, we need to have the anti-stigma. Yeah. It's true, but we need a different word, I think, because it just sounds so funny.
It sounds cute.
But I think stigma is when our brain really like categorizes. It's this tendency to kind of take large amounts of information and kind of categorize people or ideas. Which I think is really discrediting to the person, because the person has so much texture and depth. But there's kind of social stigma and self-stigma. So social stigma is we have attitudes and discriminating behavior that are directed toward individuals who have mental health problems. So it might be like on a TV show or like in a group of people. Mm-hmm. And then I think self-stigma is very strong, where a person who has a mental health condition internalizes their perceptions of discrimination For example, like if we knew someone that had depression, I've heard this, and then maybe they were in a tennis group or something, and it's like, oh my God, I don't want to play with that person because that person has depression. But then that person themselves gets depression. Then they're like, oh, I can't tell anybody. I can't talk about it because
they
then
close the door on themselves.
Exactly.
Almost,
So that's why I think it's so important to keep that flow of conversation going.
Totally.
I was wondering, Carly, from your experience, how do you think mental health and music intersect?
Oh, I think it's huge. We see it everywhere on a very dark end of the spectrum with musicians we knew and loved like Kurt Cobain and lots of other musicians that have gone through problems like the whole Justin Bieber thing when he lost his mind for a little bit. Well, I was reading a magazine entry where he was very worried about Billie Eilish right now because she's coming up on a very
steep curve. I know.
Curve.
I thought of that. I'm getting goose pimples.
Yeah, it makes you scared because he actually broke down in tears.
Well, I think that's why even she got those 4 Grammys. I think she wanted to give them to other people because it was like a little too much pressure in a way.
All of a sudden, she's going to have this new whirlwind of a life where money's coming in, friends are and infinite, like they're everywhere, and everybody is going to be around you and just watching you. And what does that do to your mentality? Now, that's on the end of like fame and fortune and stuff like that. I think that a lot of musicians, even the ones that are playing at your local coffee shops, the ones that seem really happy, the ones that seem really sad, it's always there because the fact that you're writing about your feelings and stuff, it's a time spent inside of your brain that you kind of are alone. And if you really listen to some musicians' lyrics, like, why can't I think of his name right now?
I totally look up lyrics of like, when I hear a song, my husband thinks it's so bizarre, but I will like totally look up the lyrics because to me it's like a poem or a story.
Yeah.
And I want to understand what is really going on.
Totally, yeah. And you're like Linkin Park, Chester, that he just committed suicide, and it was really sad because it seems like it came out of nowhere.
Linkin Park.
If you listen to Linkin Park's lyrics, though, for a long time they have a nice melody that goes with it, but they're very heavy lyrics.
I'll have to listen to him.
I'm sure there's lots of fans of theirs, but not everybody breaks it down and listens to what he's actually saying, and maybe he's been feeling that way for a long time.
And maybe I just had an idea, like, do you think maybe that was a cry for help, but it was a subliminal kind of way?
Yeah, and sometimes it just takes a prolonged amount of time for somebody to really do the worst thing imaginable, and there's stops on the way that maybe we could have seen it. So I think music in a way kind of helps people through those times, but then again, if the cries aren't heard, it almost doesn't matter.
The gap got too big.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I do think the stigma is, you know what I mean? Because somebody could have had if somebody could have picked up the phone and had a conversation. If someone noticed that, if that would have been allowed more. But maybe that's not acceptable.
Are they at the point of their fame and fortune where maybe a phone call from a friend doesn't really do the same effect that it used to, kind of thing? You never know, because what do people think of happiness? Oh, having all this money and all these friends and all this success. But that wasn't enough for some people. Some people still are very sad because their mental health was not checked
and
on.
Happiness, I've come to this revelation in the last 4 or 5 months, because one of the things I was going to do my research on was the Dalai Lama and happiness, which I'm very happy because now I collaborate with him and his people. So I still get to do the happiness piece, which is really cool. But the part that I think I came to the conclusion of is that we really have these moments, like even me sitting here with you, it's very joyous and exciting and fun, and I'm going to savor that, in the moment, to really enjoy that, because, the next thing might be something different, and so how do we maintain throughout our day noticing happiness?
See, for me, I feel like music with my mental state, it's very beneficial. Like, I'll notice I'm having a bad day, but the only thing that makes me feel better is whenever I get a moment to just kind of sit there and sing. And it sounds so corny and silly, but I really do love being on stage and getting those moments. It's probably the saving factor for me that keeps me away from dark times and things like that, is knowing that I have this. So using music or using anything at all as your vice can be so
having something you can rely on and fall back on and relax. It's kind of like when you're talking about the lake, but the music really helps you, it sounds like, almost in a way process what's going on.
To process what's going on. And I think that everybody kind of needs that process in their life, whether it be music, art. It doesn't have to be anything creative. If you love science and if you love casting experiments and things like that,
right, to have an outlet.
Anything that has your outlet, perfect way to describe it.
Yeah, we all need kind of an outlet, but I think it's about
to drain out all the nastiness.
Exactly, it's an avenue, a plug. I mean, I think it's about identifying I guess what that is for you, right?
Yeah, what it
or
is for
maybe
you.
finding inspiration together with another person and sing, like you and I were talking about other musical instruments.
I know. Yeah. I'm like, should we get into it? I don't know. But it's true. Like, while I say there is a lot of darkness in music and that attacks people's mental state, I think that the saving factor is the fact that you're working through it in your head and you have this way to kind of release.
Right. Well, you have to do that. Otherwise we can't. That's why I did all my research on regulation, dynamic regulation. So it's like, how do we regulate when we have so much external stimuli, people, places, sounds, smells coming in? Mm-hmm. And then how does that meet our internal world, our nervous system and brain and heart and thoughts and psyche? And I think like with music or other outlets or plugs, right, that we were talking about, you can kind of meld those and meet and then come to like a kind of letting go conclusion.
A bigger understanding than you would normally without it.
And you can build off that too, right? Because then your music probably gets more expansive.
Yeah, I have like some new songs that are much more put together than usual because I feel like I've been able to really think things through, which isn't easy. I suffer from ADHD, like very bad. I've had it since I was.
You don't seem like you have.
Oh my God, are you joking?
You're like so focused.
Wow, thanks.
But you never know. That's the thing is, I had somebody on who was talking about their daughter who had ADHD, and she was saying, the hard part was she looked perfect, so it was so hard for her in high school because nobody could understand what she was going through.
I know, and it's terrifying whenever you just don't know. I think I was telling you how today I can look back and I can't believe that whenever I was in school, I never held a planner. I never went to school. I was so distracted with having fun with my friends. And I also just wasn't able to keep up. Like when the teacher would move on to different things, I would sit there still lost in the dust on the last one. It was almost like I felt like I needed a teacher's assistant or something there with me to kind of like retouch everything. But the stigma with that, I felt like there was something wrong with me, that I couldn't keep up with everybody else. And so instead of trying harder, I would just not go to class.
You're just the way you're meant to be.
Thank you. And it was really hard for me to understand that for a long time, that the reason why my brain is not like wanting to do these things or that it can't is because there's probably something else going on.
Yep.
And it's funny because with music there was none of that.
I know it's probably the music's probably a great outlet because whenever we have like different things like Asperger's, when we have ADHD, ADD, any of those sensory integration spectrum disorders,
fall into the same spectrum.
They do, and actually Asperger's is on there, but it's down far. But the thing is that it's about how we integrate senses, right? So some people and I think actually really the research that's coming out now is that everybody has some kind of sensitivity. So maybe your sensitivity might be get overstimulated sitting in a class or having too much input that way. But then with the music, it's like it's actually resolves that.
I understand. Yeah.
It resonates. Maybe that's what you were talking about at the beginning of the show with how the Hertz wavelengths can be healing. Maybe did you notice that consciously that was healing for you? That would be powerful for you if you make that even more conscious.
Oh my gosh, yeah. If I could master it. I still feel like I'm figuring a lot of things out myself.
We'll have to talk more.
To this day, I still have lots of issues with. I used to be medicated. They tried everything under the sun since I was in 5th grade, and I remember having to stay home from school some days because I would have a bad reaction. I'd be bouncing off the walls and going nuts.
Totally.
My mom would be like, "Okay, she cannot go to school."
Those are super strong medicines,
right? But I remember when I got to college and I had the option to take it by myself, I stopped taking them because I wanted to figure out how to defeat the beast on my own.
Actually, I like to help kids. Like I have parents that bring kids in or even adults, and I help them kind of mastermind a way to not do the medicine.
Don't get me wrong. Medicine is such a blessing.
If it works for you, yeah.
But if it works for you, and I already have a very hyper personality that those medicines were driving me.
The main thing is what I tell my patients or people about medicine is that you really want to weigh out the benefits versus the side effects, because I think sometimes the side effects can be pretty big. But really, for me, the way I was trained is when you get to a place where you can't function, throughout your day, then,
there's
maybe
something that needs to change.
Right? Yeah. But you could start with like other modalities besides medicine.
Don't take your meds and disregard your
right
doctor
if you truly need that. But it'd be collaborative with your doctor too, because I think it's an important relationship to talk about.
Being completely honest is so huge.
Exactly.
I was so young at the time. I thought this is what I have to do, and I have no opinion in this. But now that I'm older and I'm willing to understand.
You could be a good spokesperson for kids,
oh my gosh,
actually.
I hope so. I hope
you know
that
what I mean?
there
Maybe you
is
should write a
something,
kids song, actually, like about that. Well, no, because you could reach, because there's probably a lot of kids that feel actually that way. I could totally see that.
I thought about songbooks that come whenever you're in elementary
And you could
school.
you could make a Hertz frequency for ADHD kids. No,
Totally,
seriously, you know
yeah,
what I mean?
something
Because
that calms you down.
what I do is I tell people who have ADHD or ADD is, because there's been a lot of studies, or even just any kind of mental health things going on, is
Yeah.
if you play almost inaudible, like you can't almost hear it, classical music especially. I know a lot of young people don't like classical. They're like, I don't
love
like
it.
But
It's
just,
great.
it kind of activates all these great areas in your brain.
Yeah, and it's filling out the spaces that you normally would be letting your mind wander into. It's like, oh, that's capacitated, so keep on moving.
Let your brain
It helps
rest
you
for a minute.
focus. Also, rewarding yourself with time away from whatever it is that you're trying to focus on and things like that. There's little things.
Little
you can do.
mechanisms. Yeah, it sounds like you found some techniques.
Yeah, of course, you got to.
You're going to be inspirational for, you know, I mean, because I think
Make
the
me
people
feel
who
like-
are under
like I got something.
you
Thank
do have something. You're awesome. Well, and I think as a leader in, you know, music, I think you can really affect a lot of people. So I'm so glad you're out talking about
Thank you.
what we're
Yeah.
talking about, because I think it could actually make the world more peaceful, really, and that's what
Yeah,
I'm
if we
hoping
just
for.
know that this stuff is normal, you know.
Exactly.
And everybody goes through it. I
It's
think
human
that
nature.
College kids today, it's really hard to realize what's going on whenever you don't want to focus, this and that. So I think it's still a conversation that
Totally.
still needs to be touched on all the time.
Right. Well, no, I think that the pressures of life vary for whatever age group. Well, I found Rolling Stones. I was telling you I do a little bit of research. Rolling Stones in January put out a little blurb article about the music industry taking action like never before to address the growing mental health crises. And there's new initiatives that are popping up from like both corporate giants and grassroots organizations, which I'm super happy about, because
Yeah,
later I
it's
usually ask
huge.
that. There's festivals and benefits being planned to raise awareness of mental health, and efforts by record labels and artists like you to destigmatize mental illness. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you. Oh my God.
You know, like you were talking about earlier, like musicians like Justin Bieber and Bruce Springsteen, Lizzo, Demi Lovato, they're increasingly opening up about their own mental health struggles, which I think makes it nice.
Gave me chills. I'm like, yes, please do. Just let us hear it, because it makes us all feel a little more normal. You know?
Totally. And like, oh, maybe I don't have so much going on that's so different from everybody else. But I just think it's great, because the idea of providing support to artists has been around for decades, but the Recording Academy launched what's called Music Cares, because it's like a new idea to lend medical and financial help. That was back in 1989, but recently the number of resources for musicians in need has exploded. Because, like you were saying, we've lost so many artists that are like industry leaders. And so we're finally kind of maybe being forced to pay more attention and realizing we can't have our artists dying because we need to take care of them.
That's the way, but sometimes it takes, like, their drastic measures go down whether we want it to or not whenever we let things get to a certain point. And that seems to be when people start to turn their heads and say, what's going on over here, you know. And that's a beautiful article that they released.
I also just think it'd be nice. I was thinking about it is a beautiful article. I'm excited about that. How wouldn't it be great if musicians and all the work they pour in, if they were cared for the lifetime of their musical career, not just the very beginning or not when they're at their big boom time? Because like I had this woman a couple weeks ago, Deborah on, and her husband wrote the song I love rock and roll, put another dime in the jukebox. Is that a great, I mean, that they say that's like one of the biggest records. It's been played by so many musicians.
Britney Spears covered it.
Totally. She was on there. And the thing is, he committed suicide 4 years ago. And I mean, he had a Parkinson's, but also I was thinking about him, because wouldn't it have been great if maybe I think he was decompensating because of his medical condition, but if he'd had more support, maybe he would have taken that action.
Yeah,
you know?
because it's almost like you get this big boom, and as a musician, you have no idea. That's another part of the mental health, is a constant looming dark cloud of, I have no idea what's going to happen to me. Like with my career, there is no promise.
Right. It'd be neat if there was,
like how you can work towards a degree and then you know that you can nail
there's
a
no
job.
security in a way.
There's no security. There is no, like, you can fill out a resume all you want, but that doesn't define, like this guy you just mentioned wrote one of the biggest rock songs in
history,
most recent
I think it was like
history.
one of the biggest selling records.
And then after that, what happens? You know, you get your royalties and stuff like that, but it's almost like you're left.
Well, that's why I had that vision of him, because they lived in Malibu, and it was like, I guess I was just picturing him. I'm just paying my my tribute to Jake Booker, who's the guy who we're talking about. Just how, would have been, well, maybe it's an idea too, that maybe the music industry thinks about longitudinally. It's kind of like firemen and police. They're doing that now with mental health. They're like, we're not only going to take care of what's happening now for our people, we are going to like create a long-term longevity plan.
And like veterans, we have lots of benefits, which I'm so happy for, that help them along the way.
But like, wouldn't that be great if the music industry did that too?
Yeah, so I think that would help a lot of different people.
Maybe we'll make a nonprofit or something.
Yeah, some sort of like help center. That would be very
or maybe
nice.
you'll talk to people about it. You know what I mean? I think it starts through like a grassroots, like a grassroots movement. Mm-hmm. But I think, it's really important for us to keep the conversation going. So I'm glad we're here doing this. Okay. I'm going to ask you a couple more questions.
Oh, geez.
More questions. Well, I mean, I was wondering, why do you think, Carly, why is reducing mental health stigma so essential?
Oh, I think it's huge because the more, like, nobody likes to talk about something that they think that other people think is bad. There's lots of police officers and firemen and stuff that they don't talk about things that they've experienced or gone through because they're scared that they're going to lose their jobs, kind of thing. And then that's whenever the trouble really begins, is when you have to shut the door. I know I mentioned police officers and firemen because they have extreme jobs where they have to...
Well, and they have one of the highest suicide rates, too. Yeah. I've had some fire chiefs on recently. It's like 55% of people that work in...
And why is that? I think it's because, like, in that profession, they are literally not allowed to show a mental break, because if you do, then you're at risk of being fired. And then if you get fired, then what are you going to do for the rest of your life? You have this now big sticker on your forehead that says broken, like they've lost it or something. But I think that it's so much more beneficial and goes so much further to address those things, because you can nip it in the butt immediately and give someone a big hug.
That's why we need preventative medicine.
People put a little stigma on those hotlines too, like the crisis hotlines and stuff. But I've called those sometimes. And
actually, those should be anonymous. You know what I mean?
I know, And it's really no big deal. I call them every now and then whenever I feel like I'm losing my cool.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I think that everybody should have that number
I think the music
saved.
Industry has one, actually. Yeah. Is that the one you're talking about?
I think so. And then there's also there's other ones for any situation. Like, it's just a very nice lady man on the other end of the phone that wants to hear you.
See, it's back to that idea. It's like when my son, my 13-year-old, when he was a baby, it's like if he took some, like, I don't know, took something and I was worried he got poison or something, I would just call the poison hotline. But how come we aren't allowed to call hotlines? I love that idea of just picking up the phone and looking. How do you find those numbers? You just kind of look on the internet?
Literally Google.
Just search it. Okay.
There's one that's open 24/7 in New York City, so you can call at like any time of night. And I've called just from like having fights with my friends and I don't know what to do. I've called whenever I've had loss of faith and
you can always call me too.
Oh, thank you, Deb. You can call me. That's another thing too, is finding friends.
See, by speaking up, now you know there's more people.
Now you know. That's the thing. But I think it's so important to try to prevent these things, because that's the literal last hurrah that you can possibly give to someone who's been going through these things, because you spend a lot of time just going through it by yourself. But the preventativeness, it's really
critical.
There.
That's why I 100%. My dad, always taught me as a physician about preventative. If we did more preventative medicine in lots of areas,
we would nix a lot of things.
Totally.
Like my sister's a kindergarten teacher. She, God bless her soul, she takes care of everyone like it's her own child.
So demanding,
and and it takes a lot out of her. But one of the things she does for her own sake too, so she doesn't go crazy in that kindergarten class, is she has meditation with them.
Perfect.
And a lot of times they're like, "What are we doing?" Derp derp derp.
Yep, that's great.
But it doesn't matter, because the ones like that need it, and they will understand it eventually.
Totally.
Of course, it's hard to sit still and close your eyes.
I used to do kindergarten. I just let them lay.
Just lay and shavasana or whatever, and or sit there and just think. And it's, of course, it's hard for us to do as adults. So imagine the benefit of us learning it when we're young students.
I know. I used to spend all day Monday going into schools, and the kids of varying ages would, like you're saying, kind of laugh, and I'd say, this is a gift I'm giving you, because this will last you your whole life.
They're going to figure it out at some point. So I think that it's like a preventative medicine almost.
It's huge.
Depends
Definitely.
what you believe, but I highly believe.
No, mindfulness meditation's been totally scientifically proven.
And I think that it's really made a huge clap on society right now, because everybody's like into yoga and stretching and body wellness, juicing, lots of things that are good for you.
Yep.
So let's introduce this idea too
Mindfulness.
to our young folks.
And I know if you're a UCSB student or work here, there is a whole program they have where you can partake in, like, it's like a 20-week kind of class. So it's not a class, but it's like a program, and you can learn to do mindfulness meditation. Or if you go to the peer counseling center, they have like these egg chairs you can sit and put music on. I know I can show you that on
Like,
the.
I want to go there.
You're like, I want to go see those egg chairs.
I want an egg chair in my house.
Well, I just think that seeking help really does reflect kind of internal strength, and it's really something to be commended for, like self-improvement.
Commending. That's a good way to put it, because you are your own hero if you reach out, because who else
will do that for you? Yeah, it's true.
You have to save yourself.
Well, that's because I think we, especially in America, we're very caught up in like vulnerability. But the way my mentors always taught me is that vulnerability is a sign of strength.
Yeah.
So if you think of it that way.
Totally. Crying is a sign of strength too, because like you let your emotions out rather than keeping them pent up and things. Because I've been a big crier my whole life. Like I'll cry at just about anything. But I think it's because you need to let those feelings go. If you keep them inside, I think that just leads to other problems and creates an ickiness.
That's why we have tear ducts. In fact, I always tell my patients, because when I finished my research in 2010, UCLA Medical School, every week they churn out new studies. And that week they had 3 studies. And one was on sensory integration, which we already just talked about, and how we all have different sensitivities. Mm-hmm. The other 2 were on tears. And the one study, which I'm sure they've done other research on, is men and women have different chemical compositions in their tears. I don't know why, but I'm sure they've studied that more.
Oh, gosh.
And 2 is if you look under a microscope at tears, they're these beautiful little crystalline structures that look like snowflakes, but every one of them looks different. So if you're crying for happiness, you're crying for sadness or joy, each one of those emotions comes out in your tears. So it is super healthy to cry. So let yourself go and do that, you know.
And when you get that good moment where like your nose tickles up and then it just falls out, it's like something is being released.
Totally.
It's not just a moment of weakness. I like how you change that to a moment of strength.
Oh, yeah. No,
let's cry, people. Get it out.
Well, I think we're just taught. Like, even that's what this fire chief was saying, is that, you know, for the first 20 years of his career, it was like all he could hear was "suck it up, buttercup." For the last 10 years, he's been like, no, you know what I mean? If you need to cry, that's okay. Let it go. Yeah,
I see that a lot with males, too.
I know.
It's a little bit unfortunate how...
They've been socialized,
Yeah, it's funny because, like, they don't... It's like, suck it up. You got to be a man. You got to be a man. But... women, we're so feminine on our side that, like, we think that, I don't know, I don't think that we're the only ones that can cry. Like, I'm not saying everybody thinks that, but I think that maybe the world kind of has put a lot of pressure on males to not be able to cry and let things go. I love whenever dudes, like, let it go, because I think it's, like you said, a sign of strength, and I think that that's an important thing. Maybe that's what the fire chief is
kind of something you almost have to learn again, because I notice people sometimes have... you know, people or experiences that prohibit or that that teach them not to, and then it becomes very ingrained. So, but you know, if you're not comfortable crying in front of other people, you can do it by yourself. You know, you can do it in a quiet place. You go to the shower. Bathroom is a good place. Someone will follow you.
It feels like you're not crying at all.
You're like, I got tears of water and tears of my own tears.
What's tears and what's not? You know.
I mean, the thing is, it's a biological function.
Yeah. Just like everything else we do.
You probably don't see very many musicians like on stage crying, though.
I was actually just going to say.
Yeah.
I have this very strange thing that happened to me once where I was dating somebody who, it was for once a wonderful relationship in my life. Like, it wasn't like there was not a lot of fighting or anything like that, but it was beautiful. And I felt so lucky to be in such a lovely situation with my love. And I was in a quiet wine bar with, like, just a little bit of families here and there. Like, it wasn't very crowded or anything, but I'm the only one playing music, so, like, people were semi-focused on what I was doing, also just eating their food and stuff. But I was singing this song called Next to Me by Emily Sandé. And it talks about this man who's great. You won't find him drinking at a table. You'll find him next to me. You won't find him talking to other girls. You'll find him next to me. And as I was singing the song, I was really just like embracing the words.
Yeah.
And I felt like I felt that love. And I'm so lucky. And all of a sudden, all these tears started pouring out of my face. Now, I wasn't sad, but I was just completely touched by the moment, and nobody else knew what was going on.
They didn't notice.
They did. They ended up turning, because I had to pause.
Is she okay?
They're like, what is she going through right now? But I just...
Did you tell the crowd what you were going through? Or no?
Sort of. Like, they were kind of looking at me like I was crazy. That's Stigma. Like, why is she crying?
I know, because that could have been powerful if you had said, sometimes I get to a place in my musical experience. I
was just feeling that song so hard right there. And I really loved this moment. So thank you for letting me get that out. I'll continue the song now. And I kept going, but I'm pretty sure some of them left like, you are a crazy nut.
See, that's the problem, is that's not crazy, though.
Why is that not? I thought
that's because of that
moment.
Internalized social stigma about crying.
Yeah. So, no, you don't see it a lot, but it does happen when
I'm going to
you
do a
just
show on
release.
Crying.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to do it, but because sometimes I just do just a show on anxiety or just a show on trauma, and I just talk about it because I think that there's a lot of there's a lot of confusion about why we cry and what crying means and how we've been socialized
and
to cry.
What triggers it? Yeah.
Exactly. Well, it's a very natural response. I'm sure it'd be interesting historically to see how.
I'd like to call it a release.
Totally.
I think it's like opening up a zipper and boom, and it just
letting it go.
Out. Yeah.
I know. I always feel better when I cry.
You always feel better. Totally. Like, you can actually take on whatever it was after you cry about it. A lot of times that's why we can't do it, because it's going to make us cry. And then if you get that out, then what's left?
I think though too, it's like, even just thinking about myself, and the last time I cried, it was like, there was an afterthought of like, oh my God, I was too emotional, even myself.
Yeah.
So, but then it's like, but then I do my little meditation. I think, hey, I'm a loving, beautiful person. Yeah. It's okay, super healthy. And I remind myself, because, we all have our scripts in our mind, right?
Kind,
that we
sweet, and important. That's what it is.
Kind, sweet, and important. Exactly.
That's what my mom says.
That's what I know, moms do that. Your mom's a good lady. We should have her come on.
Oh my God, she would love it.
Well, there's, I guess, 40 music industry vets, including promoter Pete Shapiro. I don't know who that is, but this is something I found in my research. Plus musicians, tour managers, crew members have organized something they call the Music Industry Mental Health Task Force. I thought that was interesting. I know, isn't that cool? And he said we had this guy Pete Shapiro said we had a conversation around. He's talking about organizing a conference call with what they call this Music Industry Mental Health Task Force. So they have a conversation around, let's see what initiatives are out there and what the gaps are and what we can throw our support behind. And so the music industry understands that. I think it could be the best thing that ever happened. And the hardest life, that also it's a hard life, I think, being in the music. You're traveling a lot. There's a lot of exposure, like you said about Billie Eilish. Yeah. Well, and isn't that interesting? Because I think, people would look at you and be like, oh my God, she's got to be she's gorgeous. She's got her life.
Until your card gets declined and you're like, I have no paycheck coming in. I have no future. But those thoughts are very scary.
It's precarious.
It's enough to stop you right in your tracks. But then that's when you decide, am I going to reach out? Am I going to get help about this? Or am I just going to give up kind of thing? Or will I keep going? Yeah, that's.
I've been super happy for Glenn Phillips, because when he came on, the guy from Toe the Wet Sprocket, he was talking about being in front of a crowd of 10,000 people and feeling alone. And I think actually that was hard for him to say, but now I notice he's been touring more. And I feel like maybe people it unleashed something, because I think it's relatable. People are like, he's a real person.
Yeah.
And I respect him even more for that he can open up his heart and say, hey, I have stuff going on. I have insecurities. I have feelings too.
When you become at that level too that he was at, and we keep talking about the Billie Eilish's and Justin's and all those people, there's almost this persona you're supposed to keep up of everything's fine. I kind of like Billie Eilish though, because she's touched on this whole it's okay to cry thing. She'll post pictures of herself crying and smiling at the same time.
Nice. I haven't seen that.
It's funny because she has this.
I think that's why she won so many awards. It's because people
reaching out to a lot.
It's relatable. People are like, I can get what, and also it's unique. Yeah. She has her own twist.
It's interesting because there's a huge young generation. I don't know if you look at a lot of memes, but I'm meme culture.
My son is super memey. I don't actually. He tells me the memes, and I'm learning about memes.
They get so dark sometimes because I think that the humor of the younger group it gets kind of heavy, and I wonder why is this universal kind of heaviness affecting everybody? What is it? What is the pressure coming from? Where is it clocking us all in at some point? And I think artists like Billy and stuff kind of touch on that so that it becomes so much more familiar, and then young girls and boys feel attached. Well,
that's why I think she's been so popular, too. People see people like that.
It's almost yes, it is hard for all this pressure on her, but she really is a lifeboat for plenty of people, I'm sure.
Right, because she's talking about the dark things. Well, for every dark, there's a light.
There's light.
But, I think we think, everything has to be light. But, sometimes the darkness actually teaches us things about ourselves. Totally, the yin and the yang. Carly, how do you think that music accepts or rejects mental health stigma?
Like I said, it depends what level that you're on. I think that whenever you're up to that super height of success, I think that there's so much that you have to do to keep yourself in the public eye very contained. Like whenever Rihanna went through her situation of physical abuse. With the whole Chris Brown thing. I'm reading this book that was talking about how her record label freaked out because all of a sudden she was not this pristine star. She was a victim.
Mm-hmm.
And are people going to stand by her in that, like she's now got this new thing attached to her, and that's not very fair. It's
not healthy.
People are human beings,
exactly, and our imperfections make us perfect.
But then again, at the other end, whenever you're like a coffee shop musician, like when you haven't really gotten your rise or anything yet, it's hard because I think people automatically think that you're depressed because like you're in here writing sad songs or singing songs for little to no money, and like people will often walk up to you and say, well, what else is it that you do, because you must have another job or something, like it's
harsh.
Yeah, it gets a little harsh on both ends of the spectrum. So I think that there's a lot with hiding it.
Well, they say though, as you get more famous though too, like you get more notoriety, it's like you're going to get a lot of positive, but you're also going to get your hater people.
Oh yeah, there's lots of negative stuff. Like when I was on America's Got Talent, I'm not sure how much I'm allowed to go into it, but there was a lot of aspects of the haters out there. They're like, be aware, not all comments on your YouTube are going to be nice. Maybe don't even read the comments.
They forewarned you, see?
Yeah, they forewarned you. They're like, people get nasty. And when you're high in the public eye like that, also, if you're that coffee shop musician and if you post a video of yourself, people can get pretty nasty.
I know, it's true.
I think that people just expect you to deal with it.
It's kind of like my job. If I make a child welfare report because it's my job and I have to protect some kid, I can end up having someone's going to hate me probably because I'm out for my job. I have to do something that's like disagreeable. But sometimes you have to do disagreeable things.
Yeah, and whatever it takes for you to be okay with yourself in your head, you got to do. Like if you like that video, post it. If you feel sad, tell people.
Plus, it's more a projection of that other person, and what they're feeling. Because I think people who feel healthy or somewhat happy, they don't do that to other people for the most part.
Yeah, no, you just see out of love. Whenever you're happy, you walk with love.
I know, that's what we all need to move toward is love. That's what Einstein, he said, the biggest formula he ever discovered is love.
It's love. And isn't that something? It's a real chemical reaction. I saw this quote that's really big on a billboard in Miami in Wynwood, and it's my favorite thing ever, and it says, everything can be beautiful if you look at it with love.
Maybe your new album, next one, should be love.
Yeah, right? I don't write very many love songs.
Okay, we have like probably 5 or 7 more minutes. So I'm going to... Crunch time. I know. Do you want to play a little piece? Do you want to do it at the end? A little piece?
Sure,
or do
I'll end with it.
Okay, that'll be perfect.
Yeah.
Well, and also, I have one more idea that came out of my research is aside from this backline, there's been a lot of other music-focused initiatives launched in the fall. So, like, there's World Mental Health Day, where Live Nation announced it's backing a new nonprofit called Tour Support, which gives artists, crew members, and vendors on a given tour 24/7 access to a therapist via phone. I don't know if you know about that or online.
I have not.
And Vicky Cornell, who's Chris's widow, is a partner and artist from John Legend to My Morning Jacket, have endorsed the organization. And so Live Nation also recently funded an industry guide to mental health best practices published by the Music Industry Therapist Collective. So there's a lot of great, I think, you know what I mean, things
I almost
bubbling.
started clapping. I'm like,
you can clap.
Yay! Because that's what we need.
Well, it's really, it's inspiring to see these major industry players really step up to tackle some of those issues, as well as I'm so happy you're here too, because I think it's important.
For real. It takes the big names to really make an impact.
When you're a young adult, so I think you're, especially for our listeners at UCSB, even though I know this, you can listen anywhere in the world, I think, it's very relatable and inspirational that, whatever age you're at, right? And if you're listening and you're a UCSB student, it's not, it doesn't, it's not, I know I'm an older person than you, but...
Oh, stop. She went to UCSB.
I went to UCSB, but I do know that, but I also think, it's a different time. And also you probably can relate with that idea, and maybe people can find inspiration through your perspective.
Totally. As you've mastered certain things that I feel like a lot of people are still very much going through. And so that the ability to talk about it, that's the cure.
And there's no... I always think people think, there's a certain way I have to talk about it or who I have to talk to it about. You'd be surprised by like sometimes just smiling at someone or just chit-chatting, you might be surprised why you start talking to that one person. And maybe there's some chemistry there, a reason.
Totally. There should be no person that we don't talk to. There should I feel like that would stop a lot of hate. If we could just open the door, be nice to everybody. Even the last person that you would think that you would talk to should be maybe sometimes the first person.
Actually, I agree completely. It's like the Dalai Lama. He says that we're all breathing in the same air.
Totally.
So it's an illusion. We're like separate.
Isn't that some sort of peace? Like we all just want the same thing. We all want friends. We all want to feel like we're loved.
We want to be seen.
Shelter.
We want to not be invisible. We want to be seen. We want to be connected.
It's some sort
of peace.
It's
very tribal, right? You know, we want to be
even that person that you think really doesn't like you and might be kind of mean to you and you're like, gosh, they're so mean. No, they want the same thing as you do too. And I think that maybe there's a miscommunication.
Exactly. Well, and that's a great point. I mean, I tell people in my practice a lot about miscommunications because like you and I could both look like even like this microphone or something, and I could say, oh my God, that's such an amazing microphone. You could say, oh my God, that is such an amazing microphone. We can say the exact same words, but I might be liking these little silver knobs, and you might like that it's attached to some hanging thing, you know, so even if we're saying the exact same thing, there might be a little subtle difference. So it's really important to reiterate or just make sure you're hearing each other, you know, because sometimes that happens and then those brew. And
the only way to do that is talk.
Totally. And also walking and talking is really healthy, you know, because you can totally go for a walk around the lake. Walking and talking and talking.
There we go.
I know, we should make a rap.
Mental health.
Exactly. I'll help you with that. Mm-hmm. Okay, I think we have time maybe for one more question. I was thinking if there's someone that's listening that's interested in like being a musician or getting into music and like how to approach. I know you've talked about some great tips about how you approach your profession from a healthy, you know, angle approach. Do you have any recommendations from your experiences?
Totally. Yeah. So I would say having an instrument in the house, no matter what level you're on, even if you haven't played a lick or if you've messed with it a little bit, it's important. And I would say if you don't know which one, start with a guitar or ukulele. They're very inexpensive in some places, and they're easy to pick up. Because, you know, YouTube these days, you can learn just about anything, especially playing one. And every time that you walk by it, maybe not every time if you're in a big hurry to get out of the house or something, it should be your friend, not something that's nagging at you. But maybe give it a shot and just pick it up and mess around. Maybe you won't like everything you play and you'll probably get frustrated the first couple times and you'll throw it down. But eventually you'll play something that you liked and you'll be like, oh my God, that felt good. And then that moment of satisfaction really lets you know you can do it. So just having one in the house is a good way to start. And then if you would like to, there's different teachers that are available. And I say different because some of them have way different teaching approaches. And it's so important to keep trying and finding one that suits you and your process and your speed and what you have going on. Or go to YouTube. Like I said, again, that's also a good place. But having one in the house, getting a teacher that you can know and trust, or a YouTube channel that you know and trust. And then once you get to the level of comfortability is getting yourself out there, going to open mics. Those are always around, always available. Connecting with school communities and clubs that play. It's another good way, even if you don't feel like you're that awesome at it yet. Goodness, I thought that I was never going to be a singer because I couldn't sing like Beyonce and stuff like that. But then I was introduced.
Sing Carly style.
Yeah, I was introduced to like Amy Winehouse's and Colby Calais. There's always a community that can fit you.
That can relate with you.
Exactly. It's just the number one thing that I always hear musicians say, and it will always be true, is don't give up. You cannot give up.
And that's such an important point. I mean, I know I've had other artists even on that have, you know, been very successful. And they said, you know, I didn't start out like super successful. I did exactly what you're suggesting, which is pick up an instrument.
It's what you have to do to start.
Explore.
You know? And people don't like to be a beginner because it's a moment of vulnerability. Like you said, nobody likes to be vulnerable. But the next step from that is a step up, you know, so you're always, the more you work on it, the farther you are from the beginner stage.
There's a great book called, we're going to say?
No, you're good.
No, I was just going to say there's a great book called Mindset, and they talk about growth mindset versus fixed mindset in relation to like quote unquote failures. And the fixed mindset is like, okay, I failed. Like say I failed it. I actually should take up a guitar or something or singing lessons because I do like those things. You know what I mean? But and then it's like what you're saying though is try it out, and if you don't like make it perfect the first time. Maybe you kind of quote unquote failed or something, but that's a growth mindset to you did try it again. And say, I'll do it one more time and see how it goes and not be afraid.
Exactly. And then you're a step better than you were the last time that you told somebody, oh, I don't play guitar. You're like, well, I've tried it.
You're improving. It gets better and better.
Exactly.
And it doesn't have to be perfect. I mean,
no way. I quit guitar 5 times whenever I first started. I was like, I hate this.
It's about persistency, right?
Persistence.
It's sticking with something and believing in yourself.
Completely.
Well, I was thinking maybe we have just a couple minutes, and then maybe I'll ask you one last question just to wrap up. But I just love everything you shared made such sense and simple.
I love talking about this. I love talking in general, but I really love talking about this stuff because I feel like hopefully we're doing our jobs if at least one person can connect with this.
Totally.
One person can hear the words and say, thank you. Because I feel like that's what creates strength these days is numbers and knowing that other people are feeling this way.
That's why we all have to talk more to each other. It's true. And talkativeness is actually a really big sign of health. That was one of my findings in my research. To increase talkativeness, increase curiosity.
Can you call my teachers and tell them?
Sure. I would absolutely call your teachers and tell them.
Be like, she was talking in her class because she was healthy.
Now we get to have Carly. She's got this beautiful guitar, and she's going to honor us with a little taste of her music, so you get to hear her.
While we're on mental health, I wrote this song the other day. I'll only play a little bit of it probably to save some time, but I wrote it to my
stomach was gurgling. That's all.
I was like, did I do something? She was making a motion at me. I'm like, what?
Well, I was wondering if I should move the guitar. Does the microphone need to be?
I think it might be
good.
Loud enough.
Okay, perfect.
But it's just a clip of a song that I wrote called Tunnels, because things get dark in a tunnel, but only for a second, because there's a brightness at the end. You just have to keep moving.
Totally.
So this song is called Tunnels. I'll sing you a little bit.
Nice.
Maybe I don't know anything at all. Maybe I've wasted my life behind an old guitar. Lately I've been feeling so damn lost. Like maybe I should have finished school and got a real good job. Late night calls with mama. Where do I go from here? There's so much that I'm afraid of, but she always tells me it's no good to live in fear. Magic happens when you least expect it, and if you're distracted looking down, then you might miss it. 'Cause I know it gets hard when the tunnels go dark, but it'll be bright again. You just gotta keep moving. I know it gets hard when the tunnels grow dark, but it'll be bright again. You just gotta keep moving.
Ooh, that was lovely.
Thank you.
I'm at a private concert, and you get to all hear it too. You were like, what?
No, I was thinking how that song felt pretty accurate.
Oh my gosh, that totally was relevant.
Thank you.
And I love the sound of it is really nice too. It really matches the words.
I appreciate it. I got to get to recording that one. I got to get all my stuff.
I know. I love that one.
Thank you.
Well, and I think your mom's right. Is that we need to learn to right? Well, it's true. It's kind of like if we get too looking down, we can't see what's
the good things.
It's
totally.
so true.
Yeah. And I think we're going to play another song later too. That's Sleep in My Car. That's kind of like the funny end of the sad side of life. So I always say too, for every bad moment, you can write a really good song.
That's true. And then it's a good outlet, right?
Yep. It's an outlet.
And now you're thinking about your mom and also the journey of being a musician, right? In that song.
Totally. It's hard. The next verse goes into being 26 and keeping on getting my cards declined, and maybe I should just go home or something. But then no, like it in the darkest times grow the greatest moments.
And that's so true. And
I believe in something out there that's trying to teach us to be better humans.
Well, and I just think that having these compassionate conversations builds like inclusiveness and teaches others what you've learned. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for having me.
So I just hope we can all keep creating conversations and a culture that are accepting of each person. I was wondering, Carly, I want to thank you so much for coming on. Do you have any final words of wisdom for our listeners?
Hey, man, give a hug instead of a handshake. Reach out, talk to your peers, call your parents if they're still here with us. Call somebody who you can talk to, because they're always there. Sometimes whenever we shut the door and turn off the lights, we look alone, but it's important to keep moving.
Exactly.
Tunnels grow dark, but you got to keep moving.
That's right. There's light at the end of the tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Carly.
Thank you, Deb, for having me.
I'm going to look forward to hearing more of your cool songs about feelings.
Thanks.